The ballroom glittered like a fallen constellation, each crystal on the chandeliers catching light and fracturing it into shards that danced across silk gowns and polished marble. A string quartet played near the grand staircase, their music soft but commanding, the kind that made conversations feel more important than they were. Waiters floated between guests with silver trays balanced effortlessly on their palms. Maya kept her eyes on the floor. Her gray housekeeping uniform felt heavier in a room stitched with couture. She pushed her cleaning cart along the wall, careful to remain invisible. Invisible was safe. Invisible meant no complaints, no whispers about, staff wandering into guest view, no supervisor pulling her aside. She wasn't meant to belong in rooms like this. At home, her 7-year-old son Liam slept curled beneath a faded superhero blanket. Before leaving for her shift, she'd checked his inhaler twice, pressing it into his small hand and reminding him how to use it if he woke up wheezing. The neighbor downstairs, Mrs. Patel, would listen for any coughing through the thin ceiling. Every hour she worked tonight meant groceries, rent, medicine. At the center of the ballroom stood Adrian Keller. Even from across the room, he commanded attention. Cameras flashed. Investors leaned closer when he spoke. His tailored tuxedo fit like it had been designed around him. He smiled often, but there was something restrained in it, like a man who had mastered performance. Maya had seen his face on billboards promoting innovation and the future of tomorrow. Tonight, he looked paler than in those glossy advertisements. She noticed it because she was used to noticing small things. A spill near the stage drew her closer to the crowd. As she knelt to blot the champagne from the marble floor, she heard him laugh, then pause. The laugh cut short. She glanced up instinctively. Adrian's fingers pressed briefly to his chest. His shoulders stiffened. For a fraction of a second, confusion crossed his face. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just wrong. No one else seemed to see it. The senator beside him continued talking animatedly. A woman in diamonds touched his arm, smiling for a camera. Adrian shifted his weight. His breathing changed. Maya stood slowly, rag still in her hand. She didn't know why her stomach tightened, only that it did. He reached for the edge of a nearby table as if steadying himself. The champagne glass in his hand tilted, liquid sloshing over his knuckles. Then he fell. The thud was sickeningly human against the marble. For half a second, the music continued. Then a scream cut through the room. Guests recoiled as if collapse were contagious. Someone shouted for security. Another fumbled with their phone. Expensive heels scraped backward. Maya didn't remember deciding to move. She was suddenly there, dropping to her knees beside him, her cart abandoned near the wall. Sir, can you hear me? Her voice sounded foreign in her own ears. His eyes were open but unfocused. His lips tinged blue at the edges. She pressed trembling fingers to his neck. The pulse was faint, irregular. Then it wasn't there at all. Call an ambulance, she shouted. I think someone already did. Move back, she snapped, surprising herself. Her mind dragged up memories from a free CPR class she'd taken years ago at the community center. She'd gone because it was free childcare for 2 hours and she'd wanted to learn something useful. She locked her hands together and began chest compressions. 1, 2, 3. The music had stopped now. The entire ballroom watched. 30 compressions. Tilt the head back. Check airway. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely hear her own counting. Please, she whispered under her breath. Please. She thought of Liam, of what it would do to a child to lose a parent without warning. She leaned down and pressed her mouth to Adrian's. The room seemed to inhale all at once. She didn't see a billionaire. She saw a man whose body had betrayed him. She breathed into him. Again. Compressions. Her arms burned. Her knees ached against marble. Tears blurred her vision. Come on, she whispered fiercely. Don't you dare leave. Seconds stretched unbearably long. Then his body jerked beneath her hands. A harsh, ragged cough tore from his chest. Color crept slowly back into his face. The crowd erupted in overlapping cries of shock and relief. Someone sobbed. Applause started awkwardly, then died as paramedics rushed through the doors with equipment clattering. They took over swiftly, attaching pads, checking vitals, fitting an oxygen mask over his face. Maya stumbled backward, suddenly aware of dozens of eyes on her. Of cameras, of whispers, Who is she? Is she staff? She kissed him. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, shaking. As the paramedics lifted Adrian onto the stretcher, his eyes fluttered open. For one fragile second, they found hers. Not sharp, not powerful, just alive. The ambulance doors closed, siren fading into the night. The ballroom stood in stunned silence. Maya realized her uniform was streaked with dust and sweat. Her hands were trembling uncontrollably. Her supervisor approached, face pale. Maya, what did you? I did CPR, she replied quietly. There was a strange shift in how people looked at her now. No longer invisible, she hated it. The next morning, she barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the weight of his body beneath her hands. The press of her mouth against his. The silence before he breathed again. By noon, a message arrived instructing her to report to the executive office on the top floor. Her stomach dropped. This was it. Maybe she'd overstepped. Maybe she'd embarrassed the company. Maybe they didn't want headlines about a janitor performing mouth-to-mouth on a billionaire. She rode the elevator up, watching the numbers climb. She'd only ever cleaned this floor late at night when it was empty, vacuuming in silence beneath abstract paintings worth more than her apartment building. The receptionist gave her a measured look before opening the tall wooden doors. Adrian Keller stood by the window, sunlight pouring in around him. He turned slowly when he heard her enter. He looked stronger than he had the night before. No tuxedo, just a dark suit and open collar. But there was something quieter about him now. More grounded. You're Maya, he said. She nodded, unsure whether to speak first. Please, he gestured toward a chair. Sit. She perched on the edge, hands folded tightly in her lap. I don't remember collapsing, he began calmly. I remember pressure in my chest. Then waking up in the ambulance. He paused. They told me you kept my brain supplied with oxygen until paramedics arrived. Her throat tightened. I just did what anyone would. He studied her carefully. No, he said softly. They didn't. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was thoughtful. I've hosted dozens of galas, he continued. Rooms full of influential people. Leaders. Decision makers. His jaw tightened slightly. When I fell, they stepped back. Maya lowered her gaze. They were scared. So were you. She gave a small, honest nod. Terrified. Yet you moved forward. He walked to his desk and picked up a thin file. You've worked here 3 years. Night shifts. Perfect attendance. Single mother. Her head snapped up. I don't want special treatment. This isn't about that. He stepped closer, resting the file on the desk. When I was unconscious, he said quietly, they told me you kept talking. Telling me to fight, saying a child shouldn't lose a parent. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. My son, she whispered. He's all I have, and you are all he has. The words lingered heavily. I've spent my life building companies, Adrian said. Systems, technology. Growth projections. He let out a slow breath. Last night, I realized how fragile all of it is. She watched him carefully now, not as a CEO, but as a man confronting his mortality. I don't want to return to business as usual, he continued. I want to build something that saves lives before ambulances arrive. She frowned slightly, not understanding. A foundation, he clarified. Free emergency response training in underserved neighborhoods. CPR certification programs. Public access defibrillators. Healthcare assistance for single parents. Her heart skipped. I want you involved. She blinked. Involved how? I want you to help lead community outreach. Speak at events. Share your story. Encourage others to get trained. She stared at him as if he'd spoken another language. I clean rooms, she said faintly. You saved one. That was luck. That was courage. She shook her head, overwhelmed. I don't have a degree. I barely finished community college. Then we'll change that. His tone was matter of fact. Full scholarship, flexible schedule, health coverage for your son. The room felt too bright. Why? She asked again, her voice small. He stepped closer, stopping a respectful distance away. Because when my heart stopped, he said quietly, you didn't see my bank account. You didn't see headlines. You saw a human being. Her chest tightened. And I need people like that around me, he added. Not charity, not pity, respect. She thought of Liam. Of inhalers and overdue bills. Of the way he'd hugged her tightly that morning when she told him she might be late again. "If I say yes," she whispered, "it's not because you owe me. I know. It's because maybe someone else's child won't lose their parent." A faint smile touched his lips. That's exactly the point. Outside the window, the city moved in endless rhythm. Cars flowed through intersections. People hurried along sidewalks, unaware how close one life had come to ending. Inside the office, something new began. A single mother who had been invisible now had a voice. A billionaire who had nearly died now had purpose beyond profit. And somewhere across town, a little boy with a superhero blanket was about to grow up seeing his mother not just as someone who cleaned floors, but as someone who saved a life and changed both of theirs forever.